We've got quite a few people just waiting for everyone to log in. We've had quite a good response to this, as you well know, Karen. So just waiting for everyone out there to come and join us now. I know that Peter's in and a few others. Hazel, I can see Anthony, and a couple of others are on here as well, which is really, really good news. So whilst we're just waiting for everyone else to actually log in, just a couple of things here. If you are on telephone or audio-only mode, we will have a full transcript of this webinar afterwards. So all you need to do is look for the last slide, and that will have our contact details on there, an email address. So if, for example, there's a question which you haven't asked during the presentation, something that comes to you late at night, tonight, tomorrow, next week, whatever the case is, please feel free at any time to contact us. We'd love to actually help. Okay, so I think pretty much everyone's in now, so I'm just going to start the actual presentation and welcome everybody on behalf of myself, Ben Hollingsworth, Symphony Property, and Peter Rowlands and Karen Newton of the £2.73 Club. Welcome to our first ever property investment webinar. So please be gentle with us. It's our first time. We're going to run through the very basics here. We are going back to basics in all ways here. So basically what we're looking at is an introduction to property investment. So our seminar today will consist of a couple of different things. We'll have an introduction to ourselves, myself, Karen and Peter. We're going to talk about the investment strategies, and we'll have a brief question and answer session afterwards. But like I say, if we do run out of time or there's a question which you haven't tackled with us here today, please feel free to send us an email or drop us a line afterwards. We'd love to hear from you. Okay. Now, first of all, if I invite Karen in, Peter's with us now. If I invite Karen in, because Karen is the holder of a rather large property portfolio. It's a big part of her life. So, Karen, are you with us now?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Karen. How did you first get involved in property?
I started 18 years ago, and I'd come to Britain when my mum died, and I was living with my stepdad, and he needed some independence away from Ron and I living with him. And there was a house opposite, and we decided we would try and buy that house. And the house was up for 55,000, round figures, it was up for 55,000. We didn't have any money with us, so we asked if they would give us a gifted deposit. We managed to get some money off the bank. We got turned down and walked away from the deal. A few weeks later, the price had dropped. We again asked for a gifted deposit and got turned down. They turned us down about 4 times, and each time they kept lowering the price of the property. And eventually they put it on the market at 39,000 with a gifted deposit, and we were in there like a shot. That was our first property. So we started in property with 0 money. We knew the street value was around 60, so we instantly remortgaged the property, and then we went to auction and we started buying around the Mountain Ash area and picking up properties for 7, I think we paid 7, 11, 13, 15 and 19,000 for properties up there. And just kept remortgaging, releasing cash and using that cash to go and get more properties. It took us 4 years to buy 60 properties.
60. That's 60. Quite a number. For everyone out there listening to us now, that's 60, not 60, which will be impressive in itself. That's 60 properties. Wow. What a fantastic story, Karen. Great. Thanks for that. And obviously we'll be hearing from you later during this presentation as well. As I said, I'll just introduce myself briefly. I've always worked in property, amongst other things too. Family history of property, father chartered surveyor by trade, grew up with property, ran commercial units, factories, offices, shops as a child, then latterly residential estate agency. Co-founder he was of the largest estate agency in South Wales and the Southwest, and they still at the age of 71, he's still working today. So always been around it myself, always loved it. Didn't start out in property, started out on a very different path. However, in my early 20s, I went to London to see where the streets were paved with gold and joined a estate agent there. Had a fantastic time, trained in West London, covering Ealing, Acton and Chiswick. Later came back to South Wales, the old greasy bin who always sucks you back. Came back home and worked for a property auction before working in property finance, doing what I do today, establishing my own company, Symphony Property, which is where we look after the acquisition and purchase of property on behalf of investors from outside the area. We do joint ventures with people, we source for people. There's a whole manner of things there. We've got management of properties. I've also written several articles for various publications, including YPN, on property investment in the South Wales, specifically Newport area. So that's kind of me and where I came from. I'm going to talk to you today about several different strategies, just very basic, because like I say, this is the first of a series of webinars that we will be holding. We'll be moving forward time and time again and looking at strategy in greater detail. I'm talking first of all about traditional property investment. Today we're going to have a very brief look at lease options, which is a fantastic opportunity for people to get into property with little or no money. And we'll also look at joint venture, which again is a great opportunity if you want to get into property with little or no money. Now, I thank everyone for joining us today. You've taken a really big step. EastEnders is rubbish, so please don't turn off now. If you are looking at getting into property, if you're new to property, you don't like your job, you want to change a career, you want a nest egg for later in life or for your children, or indeed you want a pension income, property is fantastic for all of the above. So please bear with us during our series here, and hopefully we'll help you like we've helped many others on their property journey. A lot of people say to me, Ben, how do you start in property? How do you compare property? And it's very difficult because it's a very individual investment. There's so many different ways to invest. Karen and Peter know so much about this in the £2.73 Club. You know, they're doing so many different strategies out there. But we're actually looking here specifically at property, okay? And I'm going to compare it. I'm going to make a direct comparison between property and keeping your money in the bank, because it's the simplest way to explain to people. When somebody in the pub says to me, Ben, what do you do? How do you do it? Why do you do it? This is my reasoning for it, okay? Now let's imagine, lucky people, that we have £100,000 in cash in the bank. Fair to say the average interest rate today is pretty dismal, okay? Now, I've been told at 1% I'm being particularly generous towards the banks. It's sometimes a lot less, and some people have actually told me they've been charged by the bank to hold their own money, which can't work that one out, but obviously it's true. So let's say that you had £100,000 in the bank today, and you wanted a 1% return upon that money. That would work out at £1,000 per year. So in year one, you'd have a total in your bank of £101,000. After year 10, you would have a total of £110,462.21. So for the rough figures, it's gone up by 10 grand in 10 years. Not great, not great. But inflation. Now, inflation is currently 2.8% per annum. That was 2016 through 17, the latest stats. We looked at it over a rolling 12-month period just to make it realistic for everyone here. So 2.8% per annum is about the average inflation. So effectively, if you're getting 1% for your money, your funds are actually going backwards. They are depreciating by 1.8% per annum. So in reality, after year one, you haven't got £101,000 because although your bank statement may say that, a pint of milk of bread, they've all gone up. So of course, your realistic total is £98,200. So of course, if you look at it, when I'm saying money's going backwards, that's really what I mean. Your money is really going backwards. Now let's have a look now. If we go year 10, it's actually gone back to £83,390 in real terms. Now, when we look at that, keeping your money in the bank isn't a great investment. If we look at traditional property investment, we look at buy-to-let or multi-let. I'm going to look at a property now for the sake of example, because it's a real living, breathing case study. This property is not £100,000, it's only £98,500. Now, specific I know, but it is a real life case study. That property is producing £950 per calendar month in rental income. After we take out the costs of management and maintenance and voids and everything else, we've worked it out, it's £815 per calendar month net cost. Okay, so after year one, we're looking at a total in our bin of £105,580. So before we even start, we're a little bit better than cash in the bank. Now, if we have a look at inflation, well, actually, inflation is 2.8% per annum. The price increase where this specific property was in the NP postcode has increased by 9% in the last year. So the value of your investment, not just the income, but the actual asset itself has increased by 9%. Startling. So that means that your investment property has risen by, in this case, £8,865. So where would your year one real total be? It would actually be £114,445. Already I can see you trying to work this out. Year 10, it would be a whopping £233,185. So if we compare the cash after 10 years in the bank at just shy of £84,000, or the property after 10 years of £233,000, where is your money? Simple question, I know. And thanks again to our adjudicator, Karen, who carefully worked these figures out for me. So
I'm not guilty if they're wrong.
A lot of people say, well, property's great. However, I know a person that got involved in alternative investments. They were investing in this, that, the other. They were investing in the stock market, in shares. They were investing in new technology companies. And that's true. A friend of mine, he's pictured here with Richard Branson, he set up a company 5 years ago from scratch. They designed an app for the iPhone and the Android platforms to basically help people park in central London. Blood, sweat and tears, Dan Sweat, through the whole thing to make this work. He spent a lot of money on R&D. And it was only at the 11th hour did he achieve funding from one of Richard Branson's companies that helped him grow the company exponentially. Now, during our time together, I would like to say that I've been his business advisor, but as you'll see from the picture, it does at the top say Mr. and Mrs., so I was his best man. But apart from that, his property income has also helped him develop the company. Now, what I mean by that is that he actually bought, if you look at the block in front of us here, rather attractive Art Deco block, it's Gunnersbury Court, Acton in West London. If you look on the left-hand side, the second balcony up, on the second floor, I sold him that property in 2002. He bought that from me, and that's been a really good source of investment for him because it's given him a really good residual income during the time of setting his business up, which I believe today, from scratch 5 years ago, is worth somewhere in the region of £25 million. So whilst we're a little bit behind in property, it's always a stable investment, and it can also help you to achieve things in other investments, because property is one of the only investment vehicles that you can borrow against as well. So that's really interesting there. Now, what I'm going to have a look at just very briefly, and I'm going to bring Peter in now. Are you with us, Peter?
Hello there.
Peter's here. Okay. Peter, I'm going to talk now about lease options, because just explain a little bit about your journey and where we've been together.
Yeah, well, I've been investing for a few years, but property was something I was never really interested in. I mean, the traditional way to invest in property is either to buy a property, renovate it, and then sell it on and make your money that way, or to buy a property and then rent it out, both of which require a large income to start off with. And even apart from that, it's just not something that's ever excited me or got me interested at all. And then we come across the lease options, because there's many other ways in property to make money. Property is still a really good way of making money, even if you don't have the money, or you're not, like me, you're not interested in renting property out or flipping properties. So the lease options, I've been doing the property now relatively a short time, and the lease option is a great way. One came up this month, actually. It was a lady had rang me, and she had a property. She'd put it up for sale. Then she'd sold it, which is great. Then she moved out into another property. The problem was she didn't wait for her sale to complete before moving into another property. So what she ended up with was having to pay the rent on the new property plus the mortgage on the old property. she was working all hours just to try and stay on track, just to pay the bills. When I met her, she was pretty much on the verge of a nervous breakdown. She couldn't eat, she couldn't sleep. She was in a real state. She was even talking about handing the keys of the property back to the bank, which is the biggest mistake you can make. So I sat down with her and we had a chat about the different options, and we came up with a lease option, explained exactly what it is, and within 2 weeks we had somebody to take the lease option on, which means they get an option to buy the property within 7 years. But in the meantime, they will pay the mortgage, cover all the costs of the property. So she had no commitment with that property. I actually rang her a few days after we put this deal together, and she actually said she'd slept that day. She'd slept first time in months. She'd actually overslept for work. She's completely relaxed now and really, really happy about the way it's turned out. So she's happy. The person who's taken the lease on, they rented it instantly, literally within a couple of hours. So everybody was happy on the deal. Everybody made something on it, and everybody was happy. And it was without having to put huge amounts of money down.
That's fantastic. It's great, obviously, when you get that outcome, that obviously all parties have found a great outcome. You know, it's absolutely mind-blowing. Like what Peter was saying, a lease option, it's exactly what it says on the tin. It's an option to buy a property and the right to let a property under a lease or tenancy. There's 3 different documents involved in this, and obviously it's something that we will go through at a later date. I'm going to give you, for the sake of GDPR and the little gremlin that it is, I'm going to give you an example of a lease option deal and how it could possibly work. Just to make a very brief overview of how it could work for you or a potential vendor. In this case, the market value of the property is £80,000. The mortgage outstanding is £80,000, and the owner's monthly mortgage payment is £300 per calendar month. So as it stands, the owner is going to struggle to sell that property, because even if they sell it for what the value is, they'll have to find sales fees, legal fees, and all the rest. The vendor's a tired, unmotivated, frustrated landlord. The property is not selling for 80k on the open market, and the property can't be sold for below market value, as the outstanding mortgage is £80,000. So the lease option solution would be that the investor agrees a lease option with the vendor. Now, under this arrangement, the investor would pay the owner's monthly mortgage during the option period. So they're effectively leasing that actual property. The investor can buy the property if he or she chooses at a later date. For this example, let's say the option is for 7 years, like what Pete said, at a price of £85,000. Now, we've made that £85,000 because that's a little bit of a sweetener for the vendor as well. They can't sell it for £80,000 today. They're helping us out, or the assignee for this. So therefore, there's a £5,000 uplift for them. The owner vacates the property, or in this case, hands the property over to the assignee. The investor rents the property to a third-party tenant. Let's say it's £500 per calendar month. The mortgage is £300, so there's a cash flow before costs of £200 per calendar month for the investor. A little bit like an administration fee for them babysitting the mortgage until the property reaches a point when either they can buy it themselves or it can be sold. The investor can buy it any time during the 7-year period for the agreed fee of £85,000 if the investor wishes to. By this time, hopefully, the property is worth much more. So basically, the seller has won because they've got £5,000 more than they would today. They've had the burden completely removed, and the investor's pleased with his or her new investment. So like I say, Karen, are you with us still? I know your internet is not great. We do have a date, don't we, for obviously looking at lease options over a whole day.
We've got a seminar ready for the 3rd of November, and I know you're going to be there and Peter's going to be there. And what we're covering is how an option works, all the form filling that you do, and the different types of options that you can use.
Great. Okay, well, everyone, that's a date for your diary, definitely. Please feel free to contact myself, Karen, or Peter on that. if you want to book some space on there. I know lease options are a very hot topic and people want to know much more about them. So I'm sure it'll be very popular. So please book early to secure your seat there for the day. I'm sure it'll be a fantastic day. And we'll go into this in a lot more detail. And if you remember, I talked earlier about 3 different forms. We'll go into detail about the 3 different forms and even show you examples of these. So really interesting day that. Thanks, Karen.
Before you go on, can I just mention something about lease options?
Please do, please do.
Because I know Pete has just talked about them, and he's talking about them from the point of view where he puts the deal together, and I know you're involved in putting the deals together, and then you want to sell the deals to an investor. Now, I'm one of the investors who's on the other end. I don't put the deals together, but I take the deals as an investor. So I have 6 or 7, I think it's about 7 lease options now. They work just about anywhere in the world. So they're a fantastic product. Some of you who are members of the 273 Club will actually know that I'm currently in Spain. I have got a property here right on the beachfront, and I have done that through an option. I've done it through a rent-to-buy option where I've taken over an existing mortgage on a property. So when you look at options, it's not just the way of putting it together. You can, as an investor, use it to create a portfolio for yourself to make money without having to put too much down to get the option.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I think what's the main bugbear of building your portfolio today is the deposit required for mortgages.
Yeah.
The availability of mortgages, the difficulty in obtaining mortgages, and obviously the money needed down. Like Karen was just saying, it's obviously far, far less money required to take over a lease option. And the end result should be exactly the same. I've just got a picture here of one here that's 8 flats in Abercrombie. It's not quite as romantic as Spain. Weather's not quite as good. But the cash flow there works, and obviously the end result will work. So like Karen was saying, it can work anywhere in the whole world. It's quite scary. A conveyancer once said to me, I've never heard of this. And I said, well, that worries me, because lease options are as old as the Bible. It's something that's been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. Perhaps it's dropped off and come back on and dropped off, but it's basically an option to purchase with a lease in there as well. And options to purchase are used so frequently. Most major house builders acquire their buildings or land with options to purchase. So it's certainly something to have a look at in great detail with us if you have the time. The next thing I'm going to move on to is joint venture. Now, I get asked a lot about this because it's something that I'm very heavily involved in. Joint venture is fantastic. It's a great way into property with no money. It's kind of like a partnership, a mutually beneficial partnership that if, for example, you were, let's say, cash rich and time poor, you have a very heavy job or a business to run, and you have very little time, but you have money to spare, you don't have the time to find out how to invest it in property. You don't have the time to do your research, to go out looking at properties, to go out buying, to go out managing. You have no time. So there will be another school of people out there who don't have the money but have the time and they have the expertise. They know their areas. They can go out, they can search, they can find the property, they can find great deals for you, and you work together. So one person pulls the resources as far as the money goes, the other person pulls the resources as far as the time and the expertise go. You've got to find the right partner. This is essential. And I would encourage anybody before entering into a joint venture partnership to seek proper due diligence with that particular person to make sure that obviously you're happy together. It's kind of like a marriage. The courting is fantastic. The marriage is great. The divorce isn't so brilliant. So always make sure that you've put proper steps in place, you've done your due diligence, and you have a proper legally binding agreement in place for that specific project. It's all too well to get wrapped up in the energy and the speed of getting involved in what are fantastic, exciting deals, but please handbrake up, due diligence, agreements, legals, all in place on that. Compliance and obligations. If you're sourcing properties, there are quite a few compliance and obligations. Peter and I have discussed this at great length at Symphony Property. We've obviously registered with the Property Redress Scheme. We have personal indemnity insurance, sorry, professional indemnity insurance. There's a whole manner of things, but we can go through this with you if you were interested in doing any kind of joint venture, partnerships, etc. Or indeed, looking at it like Karen did just now from the other side of the fence, if you are interested in getting into property, but you're worried that you perhaps haven't got or can't spare the time, we can certainly help you out in that area too. It is the future, and it is a great way to get yourself into property investment. Previously, in the old days, the old boys would say to you, you'd never get in there unless you had £1 million in the bank. We've proved, and other people have proved time and time and time again, that's absolute nonsense. Now, we're coming to the end now. Believe it or not, we've whizzed through this. I know it's been a very whirlwind tour, but we are doing a series of these webinars now. So there'll be details on Facebook in the £2.73 groups. And of course, we'll have them at Symphony Property too. The next one, which we'll be doing, is a stage further in property investing, where we'll start looking at specifics. So we'll start looking at, I know there's hundreds of strategies, but we'll take one strategy at a time and we'll dissect it and look at it in greater detail. So please don't miss the next free webinar in this series. And as promised, my contact details are on here. So if you need to ring me, if you want to email me, today, tomorrow, next week, next month, absolutely fine. We will have a brief question and answer session now. So in the notes section, please feel free to tap in any questions which you may have. We can certainly answer them for you. If not, you can always come back at a later date, like I say, with the contact details here, or contact Karen and Peter through their various different Facebook and Facebook groups and websites as well. Peter and Karen, I'll leave the rest.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah. I just wanted to say a bit more about the lease options for people who are listening. Finding finance through a bank or a lender is becoming more and more difficult, especially in the way the economy is going at the moment. And I think that lease options are the way of the future. If you want to build a property portfolio, we're basically bypassing banks to do this. And I think, like you said, Ben, it is the way that most property deals I can see coming along in future dates. Maybe even in 5 years' time, it'll just be the norm to use a lease option or a rent to buy or something like that.
Indeed. I mean, it is. Sorry, Peter, go on, please.
I was just going to say, to add to that, I mean, Ben, you know, we've looked at a lot of properties over the last few months, and the amount of properties that we've seen, and we've got to see people and they say, oh, you know, it's up for whatever the figure is. We've already sold it once, twice, even 3 times. But the people who have effectively bought it have failed to be able to get a mortgage. Actually, trying to get a mortgage these days is such hard work that lease options, rent to buy, things like this are an effective way of getting into property. Even if you sometimes even if you've got the deposit, you're still struggling to get the mortgage.
Exactly. I mean, basically, it's a great way to get in with little or no money. So I think we should really concentrate on that. And indeed, on our one-day seminar that's been organised for later on this year, if people want to join us on that, what we'll do there is perhaps even look at a stage-by-stage, real-time booking appointments, looking at properties, looking at various different sources of properties, where we can find them, where we can find the sellers who really want to sell, and we'll look at all that in really great detail then. And it is a subject that we will cover as well, of course, during the course of these webinars also.
On to the seminar on the 3rd of November. We have the Facebook page for the 273 Club. It's just 273 Club Limited. You need to put the limited on at the end, otherwise you end up on a sumo wrestling page, which is called the 273 Club. So 273 Club Limited will take you into our Facebook page, And in the next couple of days, the Eventbrite details will be on there for the seminar on the 3rd.
That's fantastic. So we're basically looking at a really, really content-rich day there.
Yeah.
Okay. I haven't seen any questions come through yet. I'm just trying to work the system out, like I say. Oh, we've got one here. Hazel has asked us a question. What is the cost of the seminar, please? I've already got it in my diary. Well, if it's already in your diary, Hazel, it's £15,999. No, seriously, Karen, what's the cost of the day? I know it's really reasonable. Nice try. I like that. Are you with us, Karen?
Karen?
I think Karen's internet may have frozen. As she said, she is in Spain, and she was explaining to us that sometimes her internet does actually freeze. Are you back with us now, Karen?
I am. Did I leave, did I?
You did. Yes. You went still for a while. Hazel has asked us, what is the cost of the seminar? She's very keen.
Right. At the moment, we haven't established the costs. We've got to look at what we are being charged for room rental, and also our speakers, Mr. Hollingsworth's fee for being at the meeting. We haven't discussed yet. Once we work everything out, we will have a price there. And at the same time, because it's being hosted by the 273 Club, the 273 Club members will get a discount.
Okay, great. Yeah. Well, that's quite simple, isn't it? I'm keen to obviously get involved. And to be honest, I love meeting people in property. We are not, myself, I'm not a property trainer. I am actually a property trader. So I'm basically out there doing deals. That's how my income comes. So as far as what you just said about the fee, Karen, I'm pretty happy just to turn up there and share what I have got with everyone. There's absolutely no problem there whatsoever.
Okay, so that makes it a lot cheaper for us.
In all essence, teaching people, spending time with people, meeting new people, that's really, really important to me. And like I say, being a property trader, that's how I earn my income. But another thing on there means that what I will bring to the table, as people will obviously verify with me now, from the lease option we did, I believe, last week. Was it last week or the week before, Pete? I've slept since then.
It was last week, last Monday.
Yes. Really, really busy. So we'll be bringing that to the table. So we won't be teaching you what happened 10 years ago, 6 years ago, pre-credit crunch. We'll be telling you about real life examples of what happened last week. So that's I think, really important and really key.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's the important thing. We've been to seminars, Karen and myself have been to seminars, and a lot of the trainers out there, they're telling you things that were relevant 5 and 10 years ago, and they're probably making their money from training now, not from actually doing the deals, and they haven't updated their knowledge. So they're giving you information that is out of date.
Exactly. And that's what I've always believed in. I'm not going to spend any particular time on training. I wouldn't commit to doing a training session every week. I wouldn't commit to doing one every day, certainly not. And I wouldn't commit to doing them that often. But the odd one here and there, it's always great to meet new people, to, let's be honest, to expand the network and to meet a network with people that we can do business with. That's my main motivation in these particular seminar days that we are actually running. And of course, like we've all just echoed now, it's a case of making sure that the content is today. It's fresh, it's real, it's not out of date.
Yeah.
Was there another question popped up there, Ben?
Sorry, like I say, still getting used to the technology here. This is from John. John has asked, what's the biggest risk to the investor with a lease option? Would you like me to answer that? Or
yeah, you or me.
There are several different risks. Like anything in property investment, there's always a risk. Now, if you enter into a lease option with people who have done it before and obviously had experience, that can really, really help. My belief, one of the biggest risks, and it's something which you can't get past and something that a lot of people will try and skirt around, is the fact that if, for example, the mortgage holder, the holder of that particular property, goes bankrupt, you know, suffers financial loss in any kind of way, that can affect your security on that particular lease option. But if the papers are properly written up, it should be honoured anyway. But obviously, that's, in my mind, what would be the biggest risk. I've never heard of it happening, and I have no experience myself of it happening. But I've kind of sat down one day and thought, well, what's been a positive person? What are, like you said, the biggest risks? What are the things that can go wrong? And it can be something like that. Karen?
Yeah, I'll just add to that because I went through those questions while dealing with this one in Spain. And I wanted to know exactly where I stood, if the person had financial difficulty or if the person died. And the Spanish lawyer who has put this all together has told us that it is a legally binding contract that is upheld by the court. So
Right.
I know here in Spain that if you do a lease option here, a court will uphold it as a legal document regardless of the circumstances of the other person, the seller.
That's great. That's great. Okay, Hazel's asked us, is the length of time of a lease generally a standard number of years, or does it vary from deal to deal? Well, Hazel, it's quite simple. It can vary from deal to deal. It's normally, what would normally be done is it would be from today, when the lease option is signed, to the end of that particular mortgage. Now, that could be 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. I believe there are, which I'm not qualified to answer this question, that would be more for a conveyancer. There are complications with anything longer than a 10-year deal. So I would have a look into that very carefully. But obviously, what my advice would be with anything is take each individual offering on its own merits, and then obviously have a look at that particular deal, and then take advice on that particular deal, if that makes sense.
Figures have to stack up. Whatever the investment is, you've just got to make sure the figures stack up.
Indeed, indeed. Well, if anyone's got any more questions, please tap them in quickly. We are running out of time. I do appreciate we've all got homes to go to, children to put to bed, pubs to visit.
Yeah, I'm off to the pub now.
Bars and vistas, yes. Overlooking the ocean, yes, yes.
Yeah.
So if anyone's got a question, please put it in quickly. But like I said at the start of this, we're always here. It's not a case of we're here every time the webinar's on, then we turn off. You've got my contact details. Obviously, Karen just said 273 Club Limited. Type that into your Facebook search and you'll get onto Karen's group. So you can message Karen and Peter and ask any questions which you've got to them, ask any questions to me. You've got my email address, so please feel free. We look forward to hearing from you soon. I don't see anything more coming up, so unless Karen or Peter